information you can get. This is Built on Blues. Built on Blues.
Welcome back to Built on Blues, everybody. I'm your host, Graeme Bryks. Usually when we talk about high design, people assume it means pretty pictures that are impossible to build. But my guest today has a resume that proves otherwise. He's a Yale grad and a professor at Pratt, but he also spent years as an associate director of advanced technology at Enclose. The guys who figure out how to actually build the most complex glass skins on the planet. He's half of Studio Lyon's Szot, designing everything from custom Brooklyn townhomes to high-rise concepts. I've got Andrew Lyon in the studio. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Graham, thanks so much for having me.
You on? So I've dig into your background because it's fascinating mix. You studied history and theory at Brown, got your MArch at Yale, very academic path. But then you spent time deep in the trenches at facade engineering at Enclose, working on massive complex systems. How did that time in the engineering trenches change how you design now at Studio Lyon Szot? Do you find yourself designing for the installer more than the average architecture does?
You know, it's such a great question. It's something that we talk about a lot in the studio, as well as I talk about with my students as a professor at Pratt. On the architecture side, historically, there's been a pretty clear divide between those who imagine and design things and those who build them. And there's good reason for that divide, right? There's contractual reasons, there's process reasons, there's legal reasons. But personally, I've always been interested in the story of imagining something, engaging with someone about how to build it, and then actually seeing it constructed. So in my career, while I might have started on an academic side, I've always been interested and excited about how we make things. And whether it's making something at the scale of a chair or a piece of furniture or the scale of building, I think ultimately we're doing similar work, labor to do that. At Yale, I worked in the shop. I was a shop monitor and spent many hours in the wood shop building tables, building furniture, helping other students. And as I progressed in my career as an architect, I found myself suddenly going from being engaged in the fabrication of something to sitting behind a desk, drawing lines that represented how something could get built. And eventually, through a kind of somewhat irregular path, I found myself back to working for a contractor. After school, I worked for a really well-known New York-based architecture firm, KPF. Then I went to go work for some crazy artists in Los Angeles. And at my time at the artist studio, we built everything by hand. We built mock-ups by hand. We built artwork by hand. And I found myself really excited about engaging fabrication in that respect. So fast forward about 5 years after that, after working for a really well-known international practice called Grimshaw Architects, I was working on a science museum, and we had looked at this contractor to build the facade for this science museum. And Enclose reached out and said, hey, we're looking to open a specialty studio in New York, and we're looking for someone to help run the studio. I applied. I worked there for about 5 years, and what I found that experience to be was a wonderful mix of collaboration, engineering, delivery, and development. And on one side, we worked with world-class architects, whether it was David Adjaye, Bjarke Ingels, or Norman Foster, to help them work through fabrication assemblies for complicated buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And what was great is within the construction company, we had the guys on site who were helping us actually figure out how to assemble something. We had the engineers in the field office who were designing the reaction loads and the structural elements. And then you had architects like myself who were, really our job is to figure out how it all comes together. So it was a really exciting mode of practice. And I think for me, it gave me the tools to talk to people and engage people in different ways, whether it's on the design side, whether it's on the construction side, or whether it's on the engineering consultancy side.
No, that's really impressive stuff. And especially when you talk about the collaboration side of things, you launched Studio Lyon Szot with your partner, John Szot. You guys talk about critical collaboration and avoiding a signature style. That sounds great, but in a market like New York or Houston, clients often hire you guys for a specific look. In the early days of the studio, was it hard to sell clients on that process first support approach, or were you purposely looking for the difficult projects, like the weird ones like replace or the complex zoning puzzles that require deeper thinking?
I think we're always looking for complicated projects. I think that's what gets us up in the morning, whether it's
Yeah.
on the design side or the client side. And I think, for us, a lot of architects have maybe a style. And I think certainly, look, we're not the best firm if you're going to build a French Tudor mansion. It's not really what we do. There are people who do it all the time. Could we figure it out? Yes. Would it maybe be a challenging process? Of course. Maybe one way to think about this is we certainly have an aesthetic. We are clean, modern, contemporary, but in terms of a specific style, we really find the opportunity to collaborate closely with our clients and have deep, meaningful conversations with them. We're more curious about how somebody lives in their house, what their daily rhythms are, what their lifestyle is, how they want to be with their children, how they want to have their Christmas or Hanukkah, what Thanksgiving looks like, then do they care about one wallpaper or another? And we find that working closely with the rhythms and time frames that people live in help us design projects that are both functionally coherent and aesthetically beautiful. And that's our goal. Our goal is to produce really exceptional, beautiful work, to do so in kind of a modernist way, but with no specific immediate response. We're not going to come in and say, this is the only way to do it. We want to have this engaged, deep conversation with our clients. And we found that to be kind of the thing that gets us excited in the morning, as much as the complexity isn't necessarily the project. The complexity is how we translate someone's desires and thinking into a built form and into their home, their workplace, or ultimately, we're doing some cultural work now, a place to look at art or to experience like an outdoor concert or an event.
No, that's beautiful stuff. I feel like that's a common theme. I've talked to a lot of architects on this show and builders now, and they always take a lot of pride in that process, from talking to the client and like hearing what exactly they want and what they're picturing and what they're dreaming of building, and that whole process of all the way to like the finished product and like seeing like eyes light up at the final project, or like even just going through the highs and the lows with them, just because it's it's like it's a partnership at that point when you're building something as beautiful as you guys are. I want to step aside from that side though, and I want to go a little bit into the more of the workflows. You guys do highly bespoke work, like the Coyote Circle project in Santa Barbara, or the Windsor Terrace rebuild. Custom details mean custom problems as well. You can't just order parts from Home Depot. How are you managing the logistics of those custom fabrications right now?
You use the word partnership, Graeme, and we find that the more I wouldn't even say complicated, right? Because we do a lot of flat panel projects. It's not like it's both custom millwork, but it's not ornate necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
So we really find that a partnership between the builder and the architect and the homeowner is the most important thing. And in any partnership, there's a give and take, right? I can't say that we win every battle, because the point is not to win or lose, right? What we try and do is change the framework of a classical architect contractor dynamic to say we're not adversarial. We have a design intent. We're hoping to find a contracting partner who is able to hear and see that design intent and then work with their subcontractors and manufacturers to help achieve that. And so, the process is the process. We ask for mock-ups. We look at fabricated pieces. We look at material samples. I wish I could wave a magic wand and have this all taken care of in day one, but it's really a lot of work and a labor of love within that partnership. And we find that great contractors are great partners, and they help us address client concerns ahead of the game. And they're looking through the lens of the design at the logistics side, the delivery side, while we're looking at the lens through the aesthetic side and the beautiful side. And those two things have to come into focus together to execute an exceptional project. Does it always happen? It doesn't, but that's where a great partner really stands out from just a partner.
Yeah. No, that's really insightful. No, I couldn't agree more. I want to go into a little bit of the AI side of things now. AI is just kind of getting forced down everyone's throats at this point, and that's all I see on my Instagram and everywhere else now. I'm sure in the workplace, I'm sure you guys are seeing it as well. You teach at Pratt, so you see the cutting edge of technology every day. We know AI can generate images, but are you using AI to handle any of the boring architecture work, like the zoning analysis, code compliance checks, or even client meeting notes?
So it's such a great question. And I think, what we see AI on the design side, it's built to kind of give us, if you're not working closely with it and using it like a tool, it gives you kind of the median, right? It gives you something that feels personally pretty bland. But if you treat it like a tool, we found at times great success working with it, in an iterative process to both produce images that are exciting and iteratively to look at things like zoning or code compliance. It's not smart, but I think this is, to me, the biggest mistake with how we're thinking about AI today. I don't think the goal is for it to be smart. I think the goal is for it to be fast and efficient. And if it can get me 80% of the way there, with a professional degree and professional license, it should be my job to get the extra 20%. And frankly, that's a huge time saving. So as codes are changing, as requirements are changing, we don't have a workflow where we treat it like Google and we type in a question. Our workflow is really bespoke. We'll take code sections, we'll take zoning parameters, and we'll start to mine, what we've done already and ask it to point out, potential failures, potential things we haven't thought about it. We use it as a tool, not something to produce work. And I think that's the important differentiator for us. We do use it for client meetings. We have a lot of clients who requested that we turn it off. People are concerned about its ability to listen and interpret. So we use it internally for a lot of internal meetings, and we use it to summarize items. One of the things I found it really valuable for is, we've taken 5 years of proposals, and we'll have it look at all of our proposals, and we'll ask it to evaluate our proposals and ask us if we're missing something or if the scope is unclear. And so where we see AI heading in our industry is, sure, it can do creative things, and that's going to change and that's going to develop. But I think it's going to do a lot of the editorial and sort of reactive work that for small businesses like ours, when the two partners are busy and you need an extra set of eyes on something, it's going to be a great editor. It's going to be a great first pass. It's going to be a great contributor who might say, hey, did you think about these 3 other things that you did in all these other proposals, but you didn't do in this one? Yeah. And just having that kind of error checking and QA/QC in an automated function is actually pretty valuable. It's caught discrepancies in fee proposals. It's caught discrepancies in hourly rates. It's really been valuable for our operations tool in that way. Again, I wish it could do things like manage my calendar and maybe manage my email inbox, but we're not quite there yet. I still like having a voice when I respond to an email. I still like, knowing what's going on.
That personal touch, yeah. And like
exactly.
You said, not just getting like a brief summary when there's probably some important details in there that like you need to know about.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, but I do think it is important to be using it now. I totally agree with what you said about how from the creative side of things, if you're giving it certain parameters and guidelines and pretty much like being really specific in your prompt, it can get you 80% of the way there. And then the other 20% is where you come in with your creative side and like finishing up the small details to create whatever it is you want to create. But it does help with some of the heavy lifting, I would say that, as well as fine-tuning and getting like a second look on things when it comes to how you said it looked over like 5 years of proposals, and like that would probably take someone weeks to kind of go over and really time consuming. It would probably do it in a couple minutes and be like, hey, like this is like the common theme, like this is what you guys are missing, or this is what you can improve on. So I think a lot of businesses are seeing those improvements in those aspects of AI, and I really think it's just only going to get better from here. So I think it's
huge value proposition there
for sure. I want to go into the kind of dual city strategy you guys got going on right now. So you operate out of Brooklyn and you have ties with Texas, right?
My business partner's from Texas, but he's actually living in Portland. I'm licensed in Texas. He's licensed in Portland. We're both licensed in New York. He is licensed in California. And so we're able to operate really, throughout the United States. If necessary, we'll set up business entities in other locations for projects. But, we're pretty comfortable after COVID, if everyone remembers COVID. We were pretty comfortable working remotely and then working, in faraway locations.
Okay. So when
we find it to be a differentiator. We're a small office. We have local roots, but we have good relationships with consultants and contractors in a lot of different locations.
Yeah. So when it comes to those different locations, I would say each location would probably have like different styles. Either comes to union versus non-union, vertical versus horizontal. Looking into 2026, do you see the studio learning more into the themes of urban infill in New York City, or is it open spaces of markets like Texas were more appealing for that kind of experimental work that you guys want to do?
What a great question. I don't know if I'm going to have a great answer. I hope I will. We find that, this is a pretty unusual time for the construction industry writ large. Not only is AI causing a lot of disturbance, tariffs, some really boring things. Tariffs are causing a lot of disturbance. The price of goods are causing a lot of disturbance. There are benefits like going back to the movement back to the office is changing things a lot. We're really seeing all of that come to fruition. Our goal maybe for 2026 is we'd love to be involved in more ground up construction, whether it's ground up houses or ground up buildings. So, there's less of that in dense urban environments like New York. But the counterpoint is we're passionate about sustainability. And I think, long-term sustainability is really about density. It's about urban living. It's about reuse. And we think that the goal is really reusing as much of existing structures and work as possible.
Yeah. No, love to hear that. I think it's good that a lot of people are taking more of a green approach nowadays, and a lot of more sustainability projects, which I love to hear. Getting close to time here, last one. You teach the next generation of architects at Pratt. They are entering a world where AI can design a floor plan and use it for many other things. What is one skill you tell your students they must master that a computer will never be able to replace?
Human relationships. This is where everything kind of lives and dies by how we work together. And that's the core value of the studio, is that we look to have deep, meaningful interactions and engagement, not with the machines that we work with, not with the computer programs we're designing on, but with the clients and the people that build the projects and support the projects. And every student, students in architecture school are trained to design projects kind of in a vacuum. But the reality is no project exists in a vacuum. To have the impetus of a project, we work closely with clients. This is one of the things that I look back on my education at Yale at. Yale had a project called the Building Project, and it was the design of a house for a low-income housing developer. And it was a remarkable thing to do as a student, because if you listened, and if you really listened, you heard about all the challenges that this potential client had, whether it was repeatability, or whether it was single family versus multifamily, whether it was waking kids up in the morning and orientation and sunlight. The reality is the things that matter to us as architects are often the things that matter to the humans that we engage with. At the end of the day, architecture, maybe doesn't exist without humanity to experience it. Now, that might sound like a bit of an old-fashioned statement, and I might catch some flack for it, but I'm a believer that ultimately people create architecture, and that we, in the creation of it, are also the ones who experience the most joy from it.
Yeah. I agree. I think that in order for kind of us to appreciate it, it's like us who have to build it too. So, no, I see where you're going there with that. I don't think you'll get any backlash on that for sure. Drew, I love the way you bridge the gap between the academic and the actual build. For anyone who wants to see the portfolio or discuss a project, where's the best place to find you guys?
Great question. You can find us on Instagram. You can probably throw our Instagram handle up there. But it's Lyon-Szot DPC, or our website, www.studiolyon.com. You can always email me at hello@Studio Lyon. If you have a project, we'll talk to anybody about any project. We're excited about, all things. And, the goal is really, are we the right fit to work together? And, on a final note, we've been so busy. We've done about 150 projects in the last 5 years in the office. I think we have 7 projects shown on our website. We've got a portfolio, kind of hidden portfolio of about 30 projects. We've been too busy to photograph and document everything. So, my 2026 endeavor is, how do I get the work that we already have out there to the world? And I'd be happy to share it with anybody who asks for it. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, we'll link all those up in the details in the descriptions for sure, just so that everyone can be able to reach out to you guys. I just want to say thank you so much, Andrew, for coming on and for your insight in the architecture industry. It was beautiful stuff, and I know the listeners are definitely going to enjoy. And to everyone else listening out there, just want to say thank you again for taking the time to come on this episode with us, and keep building, stay safe, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye now.
Thanks so much, Graeme. Have a great day.
Thank you.